Hello friends, it's me, and today let's watch Game Theory. Pokeballs are killing Pokemons? From the Game Theorists. Together, let's go. Let's start. Thank you.
This Pokeball is a death trap. These cute little balls designed to capture our beloved Pokemon will be the last thing our little friends see before they die. Hello Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that captures your heart with science. And today, loyal
Hello Internet, welcome to Game Theory. Let's begin, I guess.
theorists, I come to you guys with my head hanging in shame. I've been host of this channel for over a year and a half at this point, and yet, somehow, in that time, I've not done a single Pokemon episode.
You did.
No, you don't
you did.
count. This franchise was my childhood. It's the series I probably put the most hours into in my 3 decades of existence. How have
Okay, to be fair, Mewtwo versus LeBron James.
I never covered this series properly? Well, friends, that ends today. With Legend ZA just being released, it re-sparked my passion for this franchise and made me want to go back to one of the most basic parts of the series, the humble Pokeball. You might be wondering, what is there to talk about when it comes to these things? They've made us do the same catching tutorial about a dozen times. You throw the Pokeball, Pokemon goes in the ball, 3 shakes, done. But have you ever stopped to wonder just how all this happens? I mean, these are devices capable of capturing sentient elemental beings against their will. That's some MCU levels of technological advancement that they make out of fruit and sell to 10-year-olds. Watching the anime growing up, I'd always assumed that the beam of light that came from the Pokeball somehow digitized the Pokemon so that they could get stored in the PC. But then, while I was replaying Legends Arceus in the build-up to ZA, I noticed this line from the professor. You'll recall, of course, that Pokemon possess the odd power to shrink themselves down. With the Pokeballs we craft, we can make use of that power to catch them.
Okay, you recall this knowledge, don't you? I don't.
What? They just shrink? That feels so hand-wavy. Like the
Yeah.
kind of thing you tell a 10-year-old to sort of justify the whole capturing creatures against their will thing. Don't ask questions, Timmy. You've got to catch them all. I mean, I suppose this is a game for kids, but this is game theory. And the truth is, while at first that explanation feels like a slap in the face, it may be grounded in plausible explanations. It's just a shame that those plausible explanations are also the things that are going to kill not just our little friends, but all of us. First, we have to address the whole shrinking thing. At first glance, it seems like a simplified explanation of how Pokeballs can work in the Hisui region, a region that takes place in the distant past with seemingly no advanced technology. But considering all the other strange abilities that Pokemon possess, like the ability to literally explode without dying, is it that ridiculous of an idea that they can all shrink? Pokemon does literally stand for pocket monsters, after all. How did they get that name before the invention of Pokeballs without demonstrating some pocket-fitting abilities? There's even a move that Pokemon can learn straight up called Minimize. So there is clearly some precedent for it, but it's actually much more scientific than that. For a moment, let's put on our evolution caps. No, not that kind of evolution, like real biological evolution. In the real world, there are 4 main reasons why an organism might develop a seemingly wacky ability. In biology, we call these the 4 Fs: feeding, fighting, fleeing, and mating. And of these 4,
Okay, let's keep this wholesome and family friendly. Thank you. It is F-U-I-N-G.
options, fleeing is the most logical explanation for this shrinkage. Plenty of creatures in our world have evolved to have the means of escape that at first glance seem quite ridiculous. But hey, if it can help you get away enough to survive, it's worth it. Many types of lizards, like the anole lizard, will detach their own tail if a predator takes a chomp at it, allowing them to make a daring escape. Likewise, pufferfish balloon into a giant ball of spikes and toxins to avoid becoming something else's snack. But when it comes to bizarre escape acts, nobody beats the humble sea cucumber. When threatened, these slow as molasses cukes will, and I hope you're not eating, they will literally fire their intestines out of their butts. This sticky and toxic substance can get caught in whatever is trying to eat it, giving the cucumber just enough time to make it out alive. Man, talk about spilling your guts. And if that sound
If I'm not wrong, technically speaking, their mouth is also there.
a little familiar to the Pokemon world, yes, this little trick is the inspiration behind Pyukumuku's ability, Innards Out. You know, the sea cucumber Pokemon? Wait a minute. If Pyukumuku shoots its intestines out of there, then that means this part of it is... That uncomfortable thought aside, the point I'm trying to make here is that while shrinking oneself down to avoid predators may seem like a bit of overkill compared to other things real animals have done to protect their hides, it's not really that crazy. And you know what? The more I think about this, the more I realize that Pokemon shrinkage helps explain things in the world of Pokemon that just never made any logical sense. I'm sure many of you have had thoughts like this, ideas that seem crazy until you lay out the facts and talk to other people about them. Or are you the kind of person who just enjoys debating these ideas? I'm actuallying at the first chance you get. Well, what if I told you that we've made something specifically for you, while also making theorizing competitive? Because of course we did. We're gamers after all. Introducing our brand new tabletop game, Just a Theory. Gather your friends, draw a card, and come up with the craziest theories from across the Theoryverse, while trying to convince your friends in order that you can collect pieces of the theorist logo. Think of it like Trivial Pursuit meets Cards Against Humanity, but instead of dirty jokes or random pop quizzes, you're coming up with theories about things like, what's the worst material for a swimsuit? What's the most creative way to cook a burger? And if Freddy Fazbear had a diary, what would his most recent entry say? That last one absolutely keeps me up at night. I wonder if Matt knows now that he's voicing Toy Bonnie in the movie. There may even be a little theorist surprise hiding inside. So put your theorist skills to the test and get your copy of Just a Theory today at Walmart.com or at a Walmart near you. Now, let's...
So I suppose it's a game that is quite, how to say, it trains you to debate and trains you to argue and trains you to be competitive, but in a fun, silly, foolish way, you know. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Hope you guys enjoy this in a respectful, friendly manner. Alright, let's not take things way too far, shall we? Thank you.
Start with an easy one. Why does Pokemon being able to shrink make sense? Have you ever stopped to think about how when you walk into tall grass, you can't actually see where the Pokemon is until you step into them? Even in the new games where some Pokemon are visible, when you walk into grass, there is a chance you'll find a Pokemon that isn't visible initially. Like, I'm pretty sure I'd be able to see an entire Snorlax chilling behind a 2-foot blade of grass long before I walked up to it, unless the Pokemon are all shrunk down, hiding, avoiding detection from predators or overzealous 10-year-olds. It's only after we step in the grass and presumably on top of them that they spring into full size and get ready for battle. Speaking of battles, why can't I catch a Pokemon after I knock it out? Shouldn't it be unable to wiggle free? Well, not if shrinking is something they need to be awake to do. As we know now, no shrinking means that Pokeballs can't capture anything. So if we accidentally one-hit KO our would-be HM Mule, then it probably wouldn't be able to shrink to fit inside the ball. It's
To be fair, Zizagoon is more than a HM Mule, alright? It can also pick up. Very useful.
unconscious. I gotta say, at this point in my research, I was totally shocked. By doing just a little bit of digging, not only could tiny pocket monsters be a totally legitimate defense mechanism, but it also helps fill in some of the series' biggest plot holes. However, notice how despite all of these Pokemon having the ability to shrink whenever they want, they don't do it all of the time for their protection, especially in the newer games where you just see them walking around outside. Why? Because shrinking a living creature down to microscopic size comes with some uncomfortable side effects. Let's use my favorite Pokemon Eevee as an example. As it shrinks down, everything about it shrinks. Its little ears, its...
So speaking of favorite Pokemon, Tom mentioned his favorite Pokemon is Eevee. What is your favorite Pokemon? The standard answer and definitely is going to be Pikachu. For me, speaking, probably Ditto, I suppose. Jack of all trades, master of none. I'm, after all, just another average Singaporean. I'm Humdrum Singaporean. Hello.
tail, and yes, its eyes. The reason that humans and most animals are able to see in the first place is because light rays enter our eyes through our pupils. As Eevee shrinks down, the pupils will also shrink, allowing less light to pass through, leading to its vision becoming darker and darker. If the pupils manage to get smaller than the wavelength of visible light, around 400 nanometers, then absolutely no light would pass through and the captured Pokemon would live a life in total darkness. Think about Remember that the next time you send a Pokemon to the box, never to see the light of day again. Literally. A similar issue would arise when it comes to sound as well. At that scale, Eevee's cry would be so small that our ears wouldn't be able to pick it up, and sounds coming from our voices would be more like shockwaves than audible communication. But being unable to see or hear would be the least of Eevee's troubles. For one, Eevee would have a tough time just trying to maintain its own body temperature. If Eevee were to shrink to 1/10 of its size, that would mean that its surface area would decrease by a factor of 100 and its volume would decrease by a factor of 1000 thanks to the square cube law. Because
Alright, I'm going to be very honest. Eevee is very cute, very adorable. Does it have a simple death or is it torturous death? Please tell me that. At least make it instant so that the individual doesn't GG too fast.
surface area shrinks with the square of the radius, but volume, it shrinks with the cube of the radius. That means that Eevee would have a relatively tiny body to generate heat, but enough surface area to radiate away all of its body heat, and fast. In order to maintain its body heat enough to, not die, it would have to eat the equivalent of its body weight or more just to prevent shutting down from hypothermia. And this new smaller size is also going to make it near impossible for Eevee to get any oxygen in its lungs, because Eevee's lung volume would be so much smaller compared to the surface area inside of the lungs, it literally wouldn't be able to breathe enough oxygen to survive. In fact, if
Tom just casually throwing out all these live GG facts at you is like, come on.
Eevee was shrunk down small enough, oxygen itself might be too big to enter the lungs at all, or bind to the hemoglobin in its blood, preventing oxygen from getting to all of its vital organs. All of this means that a Pokemon that was shrunk down would be unable to see, hear, keep warm, or even breathe. Now, for a few moments, or perhaps even a few minutes, that's not a major issue. If we bring this back to the world of evolution, it's possible that a Pokemon that chooses to shrink down could survive for a bit, long enough to be able to get away from a predator before popping back to normal size. But what if someone came around and, I don't know, forced a Pokemon into a metal prison, unable to regrow back to normal size for an indeterminate amount of time? That would mean that our friend Eevee would slowly suffocate and freeze in a dark, silent coffin of our own making. But regardless of whether they're alive or dead inside the ball, we now have another potential problem. See, the idea of capturing our little buddies and shrinking them down to the size of a Pokeball might trigger the creation of a little something called a black hole. Theoretically, any object in the universe that has mass, from the sun to a soul rock, can become a real deal
Sun and the Soul Rock, get it? Because same, but different. I'm sorry.
black hole if you compress all of its mass into a tiny, tiny, tiny space. This space is known as the object's Schwarzschild radius. For example, if you take the sun and compress it down to a ball with a radius of 3 kilometers, then our sun would spontaneously become a black hole. So if we're squishing sometimes massive Pokemon into really tiny balls, is that small enough to reach its Schwarzschild radius? Let's take the heaviest Pokemon in the games, which is actually a tie between Cosmoem and Celesteela, both weighing 999.9 kilograms or 2,204.4 pounds. The formula for the Schwarzschild radius is actually super simple, as most of the formula is just constants. It's 2 times the gravitational constant times the mass divided by the speed of light squared. So just plug in the mass of our object and voila! We find that the Schwarzschild radius for the heaviest Pokemon in the games is 1.485 times 10 to the power of minus 24 meters, or 1.485 yoctometers. Yeah, we're in yocto territory now. For context, that's about 2 billion times smaller than the radius of an electron. That's the same effective radius as a neutrino, one of the smallest objects we know about in the universe. At this scale, even the ideas of size and radius.
Okay, so in comparisons, in school, in secondary school, I can still remember this. We learned from Terra all the way to Pico. Terra, Giga, Mega, Kilo, Hecto, Deca, Deci, Centimilli, Micro, Nano, Pico. Pico is 10 to the power of negative 12. This is way smaller than Pico.
Media start to break down for quantum physics reasons. So yeah, unless Pokemon are able to shrink to Ant-Man levels, we can rest easy knowing that derpy screw-ups like Ash don't have the ability to trigger black holes all across the Pokemon world. Phew. But even if it doesn't trigger a black hole, that doesn't mean that capturing Pokemon won't get very tense. Or should I say dense? If you followed this channel for a while, you know that we love talking about density, the amount of matter per unit of volume, or DMV. If we're cramming all of that mass into a tiny ball, wouldn't that become denser than the Earth itself and sink to the core, causing problems? Well, let's run the numbers.
Okay, so to be fair, how to understand it properly is just imagine two different items, alright? 1 kilogram of feathers. You collect a lot of feathers. You collect like a few thousand, a few million feathers, and you become one bag of 1 kg of feathers versus 1 kg of iron. Which one have more density? The iron have more density because it's 1 kg, but it's a small amount. 1 kg of feathers is a huge bag. So,
If we take the mass of the heaviest Pokemon again, 999.9 kilograms, and compress it to the size of a Pokeball, which, according to the wand company who make the official Pokeball replicas, has a diameter of 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters, with the volume of a sphere being pi r squared and the radius being half the diameter, the Pokeball's volume ends up being 220.9 cubic centimeters. Plug that into DMV and you get that Celesteela or Cosmoem, shrunk to just fit inside the Pokeball, would have a density of around 4,526,500 kilograms per cubic meter. That's over 370 times more dense than the densest part of the Earth's core. But that's not even the end of it. If we assume that Pokeballs are instead as small as we've seen them in the anime, around the size of a ping pong ball, then the density shoots up to nearly 30 million kilograms per cubic meter. And if we know that objects that are more dense sink in objects that are less dense, that should mean that a freshly caught Cosmoem should therefore sink to the center of the Earth, right? Actually, no. You see, when we talk about objects sinking into other objects because of density, we're typically talking about two liquids or a solid in a liquid. This is because liquids offer very little resistance to an object falling around them, but two solid objects are different. When you stand on the ground, not only are you pushing down on the ground, but the ground is pushing back with an equal and opposite force, hence you don't move. When you think about it, Celesteela and Cosmoem have a weight of just 999.9 kilograms or 2,204 pounds. That is only 1/6 the weight of an African elephant. If the ground can support elephants and their relatively tiny footprints, so could the Earth hold any captured Pokemon in its Pokeball. Still, I wouldn't want to drop that Pokeball on my foot, and if it falls in the ocean, forget about it. But wait a minute, when Ash captures
no, I'm not going to pick it up. No, sorry.
a Snorlax.
Oh, which fun fact, that's one of the reasons why professional lifeguards they would just say, if you're going to the beach, don't bring your valuable necklace, your valuable earrings, your valuable ring, everything. Just don't bring them. If you're wearing your spectacles, get ready to lose your spectacles. These spectacles, get ready to have a second one if you're going to the beach, because there's a chance of it losing. What's the chance? I don't know. It's there. And there have been a lot of stupid individuals that lost their, my grandmother gave me this ring, my great-grandmother gave me this family heirloom. What do you want the lifeguard to do? Search every single grain of sand on the beach? Seriously? Prevention is better than cure.
It's not like the ball suddenly becomes half a ton. I mean, unless Ash is jacked underneath those spindly arms. All of the mass of the captured Pokemon has to be going somewhere.
To be fair, he's quite strong, you know. There's the Pokemon that sit on his shoulder, bam, and he's like, stop kick.
According to the law of conversion of mass, matter cannot be created or destroyed. So where is all of that Snorlax stuff going? Well, it's not going anywhere. Instead, it's being converted into a different form. Energy, described by arguably the most famous formula in all of physics, E equals mc squared. Matter and energy are really just two sides of the same coin. Matter can be converted into pure energy and vice versa. This means a Pokeball needs to not only capture shrinking Pokemon, they also need to convert some or all of the Pokemon's Pokemon's mass into energy so that you and I are able to pick it up and transport it on our belts. Maybe the anime wasn't so wrong with the energy beams after all. But that is where the rest of Silphco's Pokeball empire comes crumbling down. Let me explain with our pal Eevee again. Eevee has a mass of 6.5 kilograms. Plugging that into E equals mc squared, with c being the speed of light in a vacuum, or 299,792,458 meters per second, we can calculate that an Eevee contains an amount of energy equal to, and hold on to your chairs for this one, 584 quadrillion 190 trillion 860.
Look, he begins with quadrillions. It's gonna be big.
6,178,931,466 joules. That is the equivalent of 139,624,968 tons of TNT. 93,000 times as much energy as the bombs dropped on Hiroshima. That is 40% more powerful than the most powerful thermonuclear bomb ever designed, the Soviet Tsar bomb. So big that even our favorite nuclear scaling website, NukeMap, can't display bombs that big. And that's just the energy to capture an Eevee. If we scale this up to that of Cosmoem or Celesteela, we're dealing with 89 quintillion joules of energy, or 21 gigatons of TNT. All of that mass needs to be converted to energy every time you want to capture your favorite mon, and then reconvert it back into matter whenever youngster Joey wants to throw hands. I mean, clearly nothing has gone wrong yet, but we're talking about amounts of energy equivalent to apocalyptic-sized bombs, all being contained in an item that costs only 200 Poké-dollars. Now I finally get why Ash's Pikachu was always so hesitant to get in the ball. If he wasn't dead going in, he is almost certainly dead coming out of it. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching.
World premiere on Game Theory.
Pokemon sizes make absolutely zero sense.
Well, thank you so much for watching this video from the game theorists. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. Thank you so much, subscribe, and comment down below what do you think about the newest game, Pokemon Z2A. Pokemon ZA. What is your opinion about it? I think that it is a game with a lot of expectations, and the delivery did not stick. There's like, we expect a lot from Pokemon because, you know, it's Pokemon with like several decades of experience. Legacy is like, wow, amazing, and then the delivered, not so. Yeah, room for improvements. Thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe.